Hello everyone and welcome back. Tonight's video is 10 most chilling, true abandoned town horror stories. Empty streets, crumbling houses, and silence that feels alive. Abandoned towns carry a darkness that never truly fades. From terrifying encounters in forgotten buildings to chilling stories of those who dared to explore and never return the same. These real accounts will make you think twice before stepping into a ghost town. If you enjoy these horror tales, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? I always love seeing all the different places you're tuning in. Now, let's begin. You know that feeling when friends decide to do something daring, off the beaten path? Pure excitement. For us, that was Blackwood Pass, an old mining town, high in the Sierra Nevada, abandoned in the late 40s. Crumbling shacks, a skeletal general store, a leaning church. We thought it was just history, a photographer's dream. We were wrong. The dirt road was brutal, actively trying to keep us out. Arrival brought silence. Not natural, but empty, expectant. Dust motes danced in light through shattered windows. Rust painted everything. We started at the general store. Shelves held petrified goods. That's when the chill crept in. Not from air, but intangible. A child's wooden toy train, perfectly preserved on a counter next to a crumpled 1948 newspaper. Too staged, too neat amidst decay. Like someone set it down, expecting to return. Moving through dilapidated houses, unease grew. Alex swore he heard whispers from an empty bedroom. Ben dismissed it as wind. But I felt it too. A prickling on my neck, like being watched. Shadows seemed deeper. In the old schoolhouse, a halfway finished equation on the blackboard. I stared, hair bristling, then from the attic, a distinct thud. We froze. Wind, Ben muttered, voice tight. Foolishly, we split. I went to the church, its steeple a dark finger against the sky. Inside, pews overturned, hymnals scattered. On the altar amidst dust, a single fresh, wilting lily, impossibly out of place. As I reached, a sudden sharp intake of breath sounded right behind my ear. Not a whisper, but a ragged gasp. My blood ran cold. I spun. Nothing. Just empty air. I ran, adrenaline pumping. Found Alex and Ben already heading back, faces pale. Alex saw a dark shape dart. Ben felt something cold brush his arm. We didn't speak, got in the car, drove, didn't look back. Blackwood Pass wasn't just abandoned. It felt alive with something that wanted us out. To this day, that cold breath, a reminder. Some places aren't just left behind. They're still occupied. I used to watch urban explorers delve into forgotten places. One video about Whisper Creek, a town intentionally flooded in the 1950s. A decade-long drought exposed it, half submerged, like a skeleton rising from a grave. The video sparked an irresistible urge to see it. My buddy Mark, equally adventurous, was in. Getting there involved miles of dusty, cracked earth, the ground itself looking thirsty and dead. Whisper Creek lay before us, bathed in the sickly yellow light of a late afternoon sun. It looked like a town carved from mud and despair. Buildings were half collapsed, caked in dried silt. Everything smelled of stagnant water and decay. The silence was absolute, broken only by our boots on the parched earth and creaking timbers. It was profoundly unsettling, like walking through a nightmare. We picked our way through what used to be Main Street. The old general store still had shelves with petrified cans. Then the schoolhouse. Inside, desks were overturned, blackboard still covered in calcified chalk marks. On one desk, partially buried in silt, was a child's drawing. A stick figure, wide, blank eyes, holding hands with something else. A dark, amorphous shape with too many limbs. A shiver went down my spine. That's when we heard it. A faint, rhythmic thump 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 from the back of the school. It sounded like something hitting wood, slowly, deliberately. We froze. "Wind?" Mark whispered. But there wasn't a breath of air. The thumping continued closer. We backed away slowly, hearts hammering. As we reached the doorway, a low, guttural moan echoed from deeper inside, almost swallowed by the oppressive silence. It wasn't human. It was deep, wet, and full of ancient sorrow. We bolted. We ran towards our car, not daring to look back. My legs burned, lungs ached. Just as we reached the dusty road, a violent splash erupted from the deepest part of the submerged town, followed by heavy, dragging through the muck. We floored it. I looked in the rear view, but the sun was setting, casting distorted shadows. I couldn't make anything out, but I knew, deep in my gut, something had stirred from its long sleep in Whisper Creek. Something that had been submerged, forgotten, but never truly gone. Some things, it turns out, are best left at the bottom of a lake. You know that warning locals give about that place? The one they say isn't just abandoned, but haunted. Most scoff. We did. Canyon's Edge was one of those places. A small desert settlement, founded by prospectors, then abandoned overnight in the 1930s. Official story, failed mine. Real story, mass disappearance, strange lights, madness. My friend, Liam, and I, being intrepid, decided to see if the legends held truth. Miles of desolate, sun-baked earth gave way to the skeletal remains of Canyon's Edge. It was eerily preserved, as if residents simply stepped out and never returned. Dust covered everything, yet a strange, dry, metallic smell hung in the air. We walked past a saloon, a general store with petrified goods, a row of small, identical houses. The silence here wasn't just quiet. It was deafening, a thick blanket absorbing all sound. Even the wind felt like it was holding its breath. Inside one house, we found a dinner table set for 4. Plates, cups, coated in dust, yet silverware on one setting gleamed unnaturally, as if recently polished. Hair stood up on my arms, too perfect. In the child's bedroom, a crude drawing. Stick figures. One smiling, the other a tall, shadowy figure with a grotesquely wide, gaping mouth and eyes like black pits. Then a low hum started. Not from outside. It vibrated in my teeth, my chest, from everywhere, subtly intensifying. The desert heat vanished, replaced by an unnatural cold within. The hum grew, becoming a throbbing presence. Through it, faint, distorted whispers filtered like a radio struggling, but these weren't static. They were human voices, hushed and terrified, interspersed with short, sharp, sickening screams. I grabbed Liam's arm, heart a frantic drum. "Did you hear that?" I gasped. His eyes were wide with pure terror. Just as he nodded, a flicker of movement caught my eye in the darkest corner. A shadow, impossibly deep, seemed to shift, becoming more angular, more predatory. We didn't hesitate. We burst out, scrambling into the suffocating desert air. As we ran past the window of the house opposite, a pale, gaunt face, with those same black, depthless eyes, stared out from the shadows within. It was fleeting, a fraction of a second, but enough to embed itself into my nightmares forever. We didn't stop driving until Canyon's Edge was a distant, dark stain. To this day, that hum, those whispers, and that face sent cold dread through me. What kind of thing would stay behind? What did it do to those who lived there? I don't want to know. Have you ever stumbled across an old news article about a scientific expedition that just vanished? For me, that was the Viridian Ice Station, an isolated research outpost in the Canadian Arctic abandoned without a distress call in '83. Official reports cited severe weather, but whispers online hinted at something sinister. My sister Chloe, an amateur radio enthusiast, was fascinated by lingering signals. I just found the remoteness terrifyingly alluring. The journey was brutal. Days of driving, then snowmobiles through an endless white desert. When we finally saw the cluster of drab green buildings nestled against an ice cliff, it was like a forgotten sci-fi movie. Everything was blanketed in snow, yet eerily intact. No broken windows, no storm damage. Just frozen in time. The air was so still, so cold, it felt like the world itself had stopped breathing. Inside the main lab, it was a ghost of activity. Coffee cups on desks, half-filled logbooks, equipment powered down mid-experiment. The silence was absolute, but felt thick, almost buzzing, like a power line humming just out of hearing. Chloe immediately gravitated to the radio room. I found an old data log, handwritten. Early entries were meticulous. Around late '82, they grew erratic, mentions of the anomaly, the resonant frequency, and the whispers from beneath the ice. My blood ran cold. Then a low, almost imperceptible hum started. Too deep to be machinery. It felt like it was coming from underground. Vibrating through the permafrost, Chloe looked up. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, face pale. The hum intensified, an unnerving high-pitched whine burrowing into my skull. Suddenly, dormant equipment flickered. Screens on dead computers glowed static, then indecipherable code. A low-frequency thrum intensified, making floorboards vibrate. From the corner of my eye, through the frosted lab window, I saw movement. A tall, impossibly thin shadow seemed to detach from the ice cliff, merging with the swirling snow, moving with unnatural fluidity. Then the hum in my head became a searing pain, unbearable pressure. Chloe screamed. We ran, burst out into the biting wind. As we scrambled onto our snowmobiles, the entire station seemed to light up behind us, not with normal lights, but with a cold, blue, pulsating glow that seeped from every window. The hum followed us, a phantom presence in the vast, empty landscape, until we were miles away. We never looked back. To this day, sometimes late at night, I hear that faint hum in my mind. What did they find under that ice? What did they awaken? I don't know, and I pray I never will. Some secrets are meant to stay frozen. You know those old maps with faint, dotted lines to nowhere? That whisper mystery to adventurous spirits? That's how we found Oakhaven. My two friends, Sarah and Mark, and I were camping in the Pacific Northwest, armed with a vintage topographic map. Oakhaven, a supposed logging town, was just a smudge, a ghost name swallowed by endless green. The lure of a truly forgotten place was too strong. The road to Oakhaven was barely a trail, choked by ferns and ancient moss. Deeper we drove, thicker the fog, clinging to towering firs like a shroud. Oakhaven appeared, not with a grand reveal, but a slow, creeping emergence from the mist. Skeletal buildings, rain-slicked, seemed to materialize out of the gray. Silence was absolute, save for dripping condensation and a distant raven's cry. The air smelled of damp earth, rotting wood, and something subtly sweet, sickly, that I couldn't place. It felt ancient, heavy, like the very air held centuries of forgotten secrets. We explored the old mill, then the houses, each swallowed by forest. In one, a child's room, a rusted rocking horse stood perfectly still, a single faded rag doll slumped against its neck. As I stepped inside, I swear I heard the faint, discordant echo of a lullaby. Sarah grabbed my arm, her eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Mark was already backing out, face pale. We pressed on, finding old journals. Entries started normal, then descended into panicked ramblings about a green sickness and the forest's hungry eyes. Some pages were crude drawings of people with elongated limbs, faces distorted with terror. The air outside grew colder, fog swallowing daylight. We suddenly heard it. A deep, resonant thud-thud-thud, not natural, slow, deliberate, heavy, like a massive axe striking wood, but the rhythm was wrong, too irregular, too intentional. It came from deeper in the old-growth woods, a place no logging crew would dare go. The sound was impossibly close, reverberating through the damp earth. Then, through a gap in the swirling mist, a colossal, dark shape moved. Taller than any tree, indistinct, yet undeniably there. A moving void in the grey, shuffling with an unnatural gait towards the source of the thudding. It had no discernible features, just an immense, shifting mass, absorbing light. Terror, pure and primal, gripped us. We didn't exchange words, we just ran, scrambling back through the fog-choked trail towards our car. The rhythmic thud, thud, thud echoing behind us. We drove for hours, not stopping until out of the ancient forest's embrace. To this day, the smell of damp earth and falling rain can trigger cold sweat. What was the green sickness? What was that colossal thing moving with such deliberate, horrifying purpose? Oakhaven wasn't just abandoned by people. It felt like it had been swallowed by the forest itself. Some places, some secrets, are best left undisturbed in the silent, hungry embrace of the woods. Have you ever driven past an old farm and just felt wrong about it? Like the very soil beneath it held a dark secret. I'm not talking about haunted houses. I mean the land itself. That's how I felt the first time I heard about Aetheria's Glow, a tiny agricultural community in rural Georgia, renowned for its fertile soil, until one summer, every crop withered and died overnight. Not a blight, not a drought, just a sudden, inexplicable death that led to the entire town emptying out within weeks. My cousin, Jess, and I heard the stories about the hungry earth, and like idiots, decided it was a challenge. The road wound through miles of decaying farmland, past fields choked with skeletal grey stalks that scraped against our car like bony fingers. Aetheria's Glow itself was a collection of sun-baked peeling houses and a general store whose porch sagged precariously. Everything was caked in a fine, rust-colored dust. The air was thick, heavy, not with humidity, but with a strange, earthy smell that was both sweet and deeply unsettling, like something sickly rotting beneath the surface. The silence here wasn't just quiet. It was a profound, suffocating absence of all natural sound. No birdsong, no buzzing insects, just us and the whisper of the dying air. We ventured into an old farmhouse. Dust covered every surface, yet in the living room, a half-knitted shawl lay draped over a rocking chair, needle still in the yarn. On a small dusty table, a family photo smiled up at us. Four faces, cheerful, oblivious, and on the back, a date, the day before the great dying. Chills ran down my spine. This wasn't a slow abandonment, it was immediate panic. Then, in the fields behind the house, we saw it. A scarecrow, not a normal floppy one, but stiff, unnaturally upright, its straw-stuffed head tilted slightly, its burlap eyes fixed on the farmhouse. It looked recent, too recent. As we watched, the setting sun cast long, distorted shadows across the field. The scarecrow's shadow seemed to writhe, detach, and lengthen, stretching impossibly towards us. A low, dry, rustling sound began, not from the wind, but from the skeletal crops around the scarecrow. It sounded like 1,000 brittle leaves scraping together, a whispering chorus of death. Suddenly, the scarecrow's head, slowly, with an audible creak of dry straw, turned to face us directly. Its burlap eyes, though devoid of pupils, felt like they were staring right into our souls, and a cold dread seeped into my bones. We didn't scream. We couldn't. Just a choked gasp. We turned and ran, stumbling through the dying fields, the dry rustling pursuing us, growing louder, closer. I glanced back, and for a fleeting, horrifying moment, I saw the scarecrow, not just turned, but standing slightly forward, one foot raised, as if it had taken a step. We didn't stop until the skeletal fields of Etheria's glow were a distant, nightmarish memory in our rearview mirror. To this day, the smell of damp earth after a rain or the sight of a scarecrow can bring back that suffocating silence and the image of those lifeless burlap eyes. What was the glow? What truly poisoned that land? And what did they put in that field to guard it or to contain it? I don't know, but I know one thing. Some places aren't just abandoned by people. They're abandoned because the earth itself decided it had enough. You know how the ocean can be both incredibly beautiful and utterly terrifying? That vast, unknowable depth, hiding secrets beneath its surface. I've always been drawn to coastal ghost towns, places reclaimed by the sea and the wind. There was one that always haunted the darker corners of the internet. Port Demeter, a small remote fishing village in Nova Scotia, abandoned back in the 70s. The official story mentioned depleted fishing stocks, but the local legends spoke of a permanent, unnatural fog that rolled in one night and simply never left. My friend Liam, a documentary filmmaker, convinced me it was the perfect subject for his next project. The drive was long, winding through miles of desolate rocky coastline, the air growing heavier with the tang of salt and decay. When we finally reached Port Demeter, it was exactly as the legends described. A thick, oppressive fog clung to everything, muffling sound, distorting vision. Salt-bleached houses, their windows like empty eyes, emerged and receded from the mist. Skeletal piers jutted into the unseen water, their timbers rotting. Abandoned fishing boats, half submerged, listed mournfully in the murky harbor. The silence here wasn't just profound. It felt wet, heavy, broken only by the mournful clang of a buoy bell swallowed by the fog and the soft, rhythmic slap of unseen waves against the shore. It was a place held in a perpetual, unsettling embrace by the sea. We started at the old church, its steeple a dark, indistinct shape against the grey sky. Inside, the pews were overturned, the wooden floor slick with dampness. On the altar, a Bible lay open, its pages warped and illegible. But beside it, I found a child's drawing, crude, crayon lines depicting a small fishing boat on choppy waves, and beneath it, a dark, bulbous shape with too many tentacles reaching upwards. My blood ran cold. Just then, a faint, rhythmic thump, thump, splash echoed from the direction of the harbor, followed by a low, guttural moan that seemed to vibrate through the very fog itself. We looked at each other, eyes wide. Liam swallowed hard. "Wind?" he croaked, but we both knew it wasn't. The thumping continued, growing louder, closer, accompanied by a strange, wet, sucking sound. We edged towards the main street, trying to see through the impenetrable mist. As we moved past an old cannery, a monstrous dark shape, impossibly large, surged briefly from the water next to the old pier, silhouetted for a fleeting second against the grey before plunging back down with a colossal splash. It was too fast to fully register, but I saw glistening, impossibly long tendrils and a vast, dark mass that seemed to fill the entire space between the pier and the shore. A sickening, ancient smell of rotten fish and something indescribably foul wafted over us. We broke into a panicked run, stumbling back towards our car. The image of that thing burned into our minds. The thumping and splashing continued from the harbor, growing more agitated, seeming to follow us through the fog. We didn't stop, didn't look back, until Port Demeter was a distant, horrifying memory shrouded in its eternal mist. I don't know what that thing was. I don't know if it took the villagers or if it just lurks in the depths, forever waiting. But I know this. Some places aren't just swallowed by the sea. They're swallowed by what's in the sea. And in Port Demeter, that presence still lingers, breathing the cold, damp air, waiting for new visitors to stumble into its ancient, hungry embrace. You know how some places just have a history, an ancient energy that seeps from the very ground? Like the land itself remembers something terrible. That's what drew us to Red Rock Valley, an old mining outpost in Arizona, swallowed by the desert heat and those massive, blood-orange rock formations. It was officially abandoned in the 1920s after a series of disappearances, people just walking into the canyons and never returning. Locals just called it the calling place. My archaeology professor, Dr. Elena Ramirez, thought it was a perfect field study. I was just her reluctant graduate student. The journey was brutal, hours of driving through a landscape that felt alien, oppressive. When we finally reached Red Rock Valley, it was exactly as advertised. A handful of sun-baked shacks crumbling into the ochre dust, overshadowed by these gargantuan ancient rock formations that seemed to scrape the sky. The silence was thick, heavy, broken only by the dry whisper of wind through the canyons. But it wasn't just wind. There was a faint, almost subliminal hum, a low thrumming that seemed to vibrate in my teeth, resonating from the very rock itself. No birds, no insects, just that pervasive, unnatural hum. It felt less like a sound and more like a presence. We set up our small camp near the ghost town, then started exploring. Inside the assay office, we found a journal. The entries started normally, discussing ore yields, but they quickly devolved into frantic scrawled warnings about the voices in the stones and the constant, overwhelming urge to join them. One page had a crude drawing of a figure with elongated limbs, its head tilting upwards towards the largest mesa. That's when the hum intensified, shifting from a background vibration to a distinct pressure inside my skull. Eleanor looked at me, her face pale. "Did you feel that?" she whispered, as the sun began to set casting long, distorted shadows. The hum grew into an almost unbearable shriek, vibrating not just in my head, but through my entire body. It was like 1,000 whispers, just out of understanding, pressing in from all sides. We tried to ignore it, to focus on our work. But then Eleanor pointed, a trembling finger towards the largest mesa towering over the town. Silhouetted against the last vestiges of orange light, a figure stood. Impossibly tall, unnaturally slender. Its form seemed to waver and shimmer in the heat. Yet it was undeniably there. Its head was tilted, as if listening to the wind, or perhaps to the silent screams of those who had walked into the canyons. It felt like it was looking directly at us, observing, waiting. We didn't need to speak. Pure, unadulterated terror seized us. We scrambled back to the jeep, fumbling with the keys, the hum in our heads growing to a deafening roar. As we sped away, throwing dust in our wake, I glanced back. The figure was gone, but the hum seemed to echo in the empty desert. A low, persistent thrum that followed us for miles. To this day, the sight of a vast empty landscape or a prominent rock formation can trigger a cold sweat. What was that hum? What did the voices say? And who or what stood sentinel on that mesa, calling people into the deep, echoing canyons of Red Rock Valley? I have no answers, only nightmares. Have you ever wondered about places that just disappear from maps? Not by natural disaster, but as if intentionally erased. Havenwood was such a case. A quaint, isolated town in the Appalachian Mountains, known for its tight-knit community and a peculiar annual harvest festival. It vanished from all records in the late 60s. My girlfriend, Maya, and I, avid hikers, found a faded, unofficial trail map showing its location. Curiosity, as they say, kills more than the cat. The hike was grueling, switchbacks through thick primeval forest. The air grew heavier, carrying a strange clawing scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and something like old dried blood and wood smoke. Havenwood appeared through a dense thicket, eerily preserved as if time had merely paused. Houses stood intact, windows like blank, judging eyes. The general store sign was faded but legible. Most striking was the absolute silence. No birds, no rustling leaves, no sounds of forest life. Just a profound, heavy stillness pressing in. We explored a few houses. They were surprisingly clean, but frozen. A chessboard was set up, a game half finished. A child's meticulously arranged dollhouse. Everything felt staged, like a morbid diorama. Then we found the town square. In the center, a large weathered wooden effigy stood, tall and menacing, woven from branches and adorned with dried corn husks and what looked like scraps of old fabric. It was undeniably ritualistic, primal. Maya pointed to a dark, sticky stain on the ground beneath it, impossibly dark for dried mud. That's when we heard it, a faint, low humming from deep within the forest, vibrating through the ground. It was mournful, guttural, like 1,000 insects buzzing in a subterranean hive. The hum intensified, rising in pitch, and the air grew cold, thick with an unseen presence. From the darkest edges of the forest, faint, flickering lights appeared, bobbing between trees, moving with a strange, deliberate rhythm towards the town square. Not flashlights, but dim, orange embers, like eyes in the gloom. Then, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump started, bare feet on damp earth, drawing closer, accompanied by the low, chanting hum. Through the trees, we glimpsed movement. Not distinct figures, but shifting shadows, too many, too close, moving like a slow, terrifying procession, converging on the square, on us. We froze, paralyzed by terror. The chanting grew louder, more distinct, guttural, incomprehensible. We heard faint clicks and rustles as shadows drew closer, like dry bones scraping. We didn't wait. We turned and ran, scrambling back through the undergrowth, not daring to look back. The chanting and thumping following us like a physical force. We didn't stop until the forest was miles behind us, and the hum no longer vibrated in our bones. To this day, the smell of wood smoke or an unfamiliar hum can make my blood run cold. What was that harvest festival? What did they sacrifice? And what still walks the paths of Havenwood, waiting for new wanderers to join its silent, terrifying ritual? I never want to know. You ever read about ancient civilizations that just up and left their magnificent cities, leaving behind vast, empty monuments? The same chilling mystery clung to whispers about the sunken city of Eldoria. Deep in the desert, local legends spoke of a prosperous community that disappeared beneath the sands one night, leaving a strange, shimmering mirage. A mirage that, if you looked closely, held faint outlines of buildings. My friend, Guy, a desert survivalist, scoffed at the supernatural, but even he was intrigued by the anomaly. We decided to investigate. The journey was relentless. Days of scorching sun, endless dunes and mirages. Then we saw it. Not a mirage, but a vast, shimmering distortion in the air. A persistent haze rising from the desert floor. As we approached, the haze resolved into glass-smooth, perfectly preserved buildings, half buried in pristine, undisturbed sand. No dust, no decay, just smooth, alien structures gleaming under the sun. The silence here wasn't just empty. It was a pressurized, vibrating quiet, like being underwater. And the heat. It wasn't just the sun. It was an internal heat radiating from the structures themselves, making the air shimmer. We carefully stepped onto what seemed to be a plaza. The ground was hard, smooth, reflecting the sky like obsidian. As we walked, a faint, high-pitched whirring sound began. Subtle at first, then growing in intensity from beneath the surface. In the center of the plaza, a massive, crystalline monolith rose from the sand, its surface covered in strange, glowing symbols that pulsed with a faint, internal light. It felt ancient, powerful, utterly alien. As we neared the monolith, the whirring sound peaked, becoming an almost painful vibration in my chest. Then, the glowing symbols intensified, pulsing brighter and faster. Suddenly, the smooth, dark surfaces of the buildings began to ripple, like water. From the deepest parts of these structures, impossibly thin, luminous tendrils of pure light extended, reaching out slowly, deliberately. They were not solid, but seemed composed of pure energy, crackling with a silent, intense force. The ground vibrated violently, and a low, resonant hum pulsed through the very sand. Kai screamed. From the depths of the shimmering structures, forms coalesced. Not human, not animal. They were beings of pure light, vaguely humanoid, but elongated, fluid. Their heads tipped back as if in silent ecstasy or agony. They seemed to be feeding on the intense heat and energy, drawing it in, growing brighter, more defined, their silent, glowing eyes turning towards us. We didn't need to speak. Pure, absolute terror seized us. We turned and ran, stumbling across the shimmering plaza, the ground vibrating violently, the whirring and humming becoming a deafening roar. The luminous tendrils extended faster, stretching towards us, brushing the air where we had just been. We didn't stop until Eldoria was a distant, shimmering blur, until the heat and the humming subsided, replaced by the mundane, brutal heat of the desert. To this day, a mirage or a high-pitched whir can bring back that terror. What was Eldoria? What ancient, energy-based entities did it house? What happens to those who get too close, whose life force fuels their silent, eternal hunger? I don't know, but I know one thing. Some places aren't just buried by sand. They're consumed by what lurks beneath. Conclusion and call to action. You've heard the whispers. You've felt the chill. 10 stories, 10 different abandoned towns, each a chilling testament to unseen forces that linger in the forgotten corners of our world. From the icy Arctic to the suffocating desert, from ancient forests to murky seas, these places are more than ruins. They are battlefields where humanity encountered something it couldn't comprehend, something it couldn't defeat. And so it fled, leaving behind monuments to terror. Think about it. Each account points to a common thread, an inexplicable event, a sudden evacuation, a lingering presence guarding its secrets with a cold, unforgiving hand. These weren't just places that fell on hard times. These were places where reality seemed to thin, where something primordial or alien broke through, demanding tribute. The abandoned doll in Oakhaven, the scarecrow in Etheria's Glow, the glowing monolith in Eldoria. They aren't just remnants. They are markers, warnings, for those foolish enough to come searching. Before you dismiss these as coincidences, as overactive imaginations, ask yourself, have you ever felt that subtle prickle on your neck in an old, empty house? Heard a sound that couldn't be explained by wind? That feeling, that instinct, is often our primal self screaming a warning that our modern minds try to rationalize away. These stories are a reminder that some things can't be rationalized. Some fears are deeply ingrained because they're rooted in genuine, terrifying truth. The silence in these towns isn't empty. It's filled with echoes of what happened, with the malevolent energy of what remains. It's a silence that screams of forgotten rituals, of ancient entities, of horrors that defy description. For those who dare to trespass, who ignore the palpable dread, the consequences can be more than just a fright. They can be a lingering nightmare, a permanent scar on the soul, or worse, far, far worse. So the next time you see a forgotten road, a crumbling building, or an old map with a faded name, take a moment. Consider the stories you've heard today. What drove those people away? What lurks in the shadows, still waiting? In some places, the past isn't dead. It's just sleeping, and it's hungry. Have you ever explored an abandoned place and felt that undeniable presence? Stumbled upon something that defied explanation? Share your own chilling encounters in the comments below. Your story might just be the next one we hear. If these tales have sent a shiver down your spine, hit that like button, subscribe for more true horror, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next descent into the unknown. Remember, the world is full of places where the veil is thin, and the darkness is always listening. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and never forget that some places are abandoned for a reason, and some reasons are still very much alive.